Okay, welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. If I can get back in my seat.
It's over here in the window, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's all we have for tonight.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I just remind you of the protocol with the use of the mics. Don't forget to turn on your mic when you go to speak, and turn it off when you're done. Just a couple of comments. This is our first public meeting since March of 2020. It seems like it seems like a long time, and it has been a long time. But we hope we're able to proceed now, inviting the public to join us in our deliberations. It's also nice to be in a somewhat air-conditioned space, and that feels good after spending the day outside for me. Reading the reports from the principals and the other administrators that were included in our packet, their end of year comments. There is a common theme there, which I'm sure everyone noted, that everyone is delighted to have this year over. The enthusiasm jumped off the page, I think, from everybody. I mean, tonight we're going to be talking about already talking about September opening, but and there are quite, there are risks out there, but everything looks at this point like we'll be meeting 100% with all our students back. We're going to be talking about the masking policy tonight as part of our discussion. And that may lead to some further conversations that bring us into the summer. So this summer is going to be a busy time, certainly for the administrators, and perhaps we'll have to squeeze in another board meeting during July if there are unresolved issues from tonight. Okay, so other than that. I go to item 4.0. We have minutes from the meeting of May 24th and May 14th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Motion by Lou. Do I have a second? Second by Bill. Take a look. Any corrections? Yep, Lauren.
I just noted two small suggestions on page 1 of the May 24th, just a typo under the first paragraph under recognition and comments from board chair, just a typo in souls. And then page 2 at the very bottom, legislative update, just the suggestion on the last sentence. It has not been voted on by the legislature yet, and the biggest concern with this bill is the potential cost to the district. I would just suggest adding legal costs. And then I think that was it for me. Yes, that was it.
Okay, thanks, Lorna. Any other comments or suggestions on the corrections on the minutes? So so with those changes to the May 24th, the minutes of May 24, as amended, if we can approve the minutes. You're okay with those amendments?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Okay, Bill, you're okay, still as a second with those changes?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Patrick? you have anything? No? Okay. Item 6.0, public comment. The first time we've been able to do this in person. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on any issues on the agenda or not on the agenda at this point? Sure. Just ask you to state your name and.
Sure. Hi, my name is Tim Pratt. I have a child in RSU1, and I just wanted to express my support for the pooled testing program that's under consideration, I believe, later in the agenda. I didn't see any results from the survey that was sent out to parents a few weeks ago, but I think the number that we're looking at was 30% for each school. I don't know, but I would imagine that we've hit that number, and then there's consideration by the board to enter into that program with, I believe, funding from the state in order to pay for the first year of it. I would just say that my first grader is ready to go and participate in that program. It seems like a no-brainer from a public safety standpoint to participate in it. I work in a higher ed institution that had a really successful pooled testing program over this past year that helped us identify cases early, stop transmission, and have us remain open for the entire year and have a successful academic year, which was, critical. So I just would again say that I would urge you all to support that pool testing program and vote in the affirmative for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think as part of Katie's presentation, we will go through that the results of that polling that we did. So, thank you. Any other public comment? No. Yep. Sure. Again, if you just state your name, it'd be great.
Hi, Elaine Pinkham, and out of disclosure, I'm an employee. I work at Woolwich Central, as well as live in Georgetown and have a tuition student in the district. So speaking as a parent and as an employee, I'm hoping that we will not require masks for students this year. So we hired several employees, as did every school in the district throughout the year, and it dawned on me the last day of school when we had an outdoor barbecue and I saw one of them. I wouldn't have known her had I run into her at Shaw's. I literally would not have known her. It looked completely different to me. And I think it's sad that we've been through this for a year. I also have a younger child who's in school in Georgetown, but I'll just say, having my fourth grader look at me and say, "Mom, I can't do this another year," is heartbreaking as a parent. And I hope that we won't get to the point where we make distinctions between vaccinated and unvaccinated people. I just think that will add some significant tension and put a lot of pressure on people to make decisions that they aren't comfortable with. Thank you for your time. I know I'm also the school board chair in Georgetown, so I understand what you guys do and the amount of time that it takes, and I really appreciate your time and your hard work. I know it's been a year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your comments. Again, that same item, we'll discuss our masking policy. Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Okay, item 7.0, committee reports. 7.1, legislative updates. Lorna?
Thank you. So as you can imagine, the legislature has been really busy. And Wednesday, the day after tomorrow, you all probably have been seeing some emails come in from Maine School Management on some of the bills they're most concerned about. But Wednesday, the legislature reconvenes and will be addressing a lot of bills, but apparently these as well. And they've asked us to look into them and contact our senators and House representatives of any concerns that we have. So I'll just again, there's so many, as you know, but I'll go through these on what I know them to be now. And then if Patrick or Justin or anyone else in here knows more than me, that would be really appreciative. So LD 1373 is the restraint and seclusion bill, which has gone through some amendment. And of course, MSMA does not support it as written, even with amendment. And both sides, frankly, are torn on this. Typically, everything goes party lines, but there's really both sides have concerns, and there's sides within parties as well. So I don't know how it will end up. There's been attempts at better defining restraint and seclusion and examples of that. And when used, I did talk to one of our state reps. And I think the unfortunate thing with some of these very volatile, emotional bills is that there's a presumption that any use of restraint or seclusion is kind of dubious or always unnecessary. So hopefully, however it flushes out Wednesday, there'll be a lot of thought on both sides. There's been a lot of passionate testimony from both sides. But I would encourage you all to read LD 1373 if you haven't, in the most current iteration of it. And then if you have any other questions, do reach out to our representatives. LD 552 is the IEP, the bill that addresses IEPs. And Justin, this is where you can probably help me, but from what I can tell, that's ended up as a resolution rather than a law.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And that the DOE has been asked to redefine or reevaluate the rules. Is that about right?
Yeah. Take a look at users and the regulations incorporated into that, correct? Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So LD 552 did not pass as a law, but is, as it stands, as a resolution. And then LD 677 is what they are, one of our most recent emails from MSMA, and this deals with labor and arbitration. And from what I can glean from this, and Patrick, feel free to elaborate, what I can glean from this, the MSMA is concerned about loss or a shifting of financial control from local to outside arbitrators or other entities, and that it revolves around binding arbitration, which, as I understand it right now, is not the law. And it does look like striking, however, wasn't the amendment did remove the ability to strike. And Patrick, if I'm wrong about that, feel free to elaborate. But again, if I would look into those three, 1373, 552, and 677. And then, of course, the Maine School Board Association and MSMA have the full position on bills, if you're interested in what else is out there. So that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, thanks, Lorna. Any questions of Lorna? I think Lorna raised in an email to me, raised a question of whether there, as a matter of practice, whether there's any pieces of legislation that the board feels strongly and unified on that we may want to adopt a resolution or a vote to send a letter to our representatives as a board, not as individuals. And I know this isn't listed as a potential action item, I guess, but are there any such of the, since they're kind of getting to the end of the session here, I mean, is there any feeling on any of these bills that we might like to take a position as a board? Yep, Jen?
I'm not sure on these bills, but would it help to send a letter encouraging funding up to the, with the new, I believe the last biennial budget that was just adopted was trying to raise up to the 55% level of what school funding was going to reach. And I don't know if that's something that we could coalesce around, to just a word of encouragement and request to continue to pursue that. It's not exactly any specific bill or stance on a topic, but more just of a general sense of, to encourage that. Just a thought.
Yeah, there was a press piece put out today on that. That I guess again this week the legislature is expected to. It is part of an agreed to of a budget agreement. At least that's my understanding. So I don't know if there's any particular if that's in any particular jeopardy or not. But we could still take a position on it if there's interest. Lorna?
Jen, I'm glad you mentioned that because as part of good news under my legislative report, I was going to mention what Steve just said, is that Wednesday they will be voting. Of course, it came out of appropriations recommending that they fully fund the 55%. And they even had a breakdown per district, which was about 893,000 anticipated in changing the mill rate from the 7.9 to 7.26. So it does, again, all this stuff is pretty much falling along party lines so far. So as Steve said, I don't see a bill like this being in a whole lot of jeopardy, but or a vote, excuse me, like this. But it does look optimistic. But as far as whether we should collectively show our support, I guess that's up for discussion too.
Well, what's the feeling of the board on that? I mean, going to 55% is a big deal. Let's hope they stay there. I think everybody's a little bit flush this year because of additional federal funding, and I don't think our tax revenues took the hit that were at least initially expected. But having touching 55% and staying there would be a terrific thing for school districts and our taxpayers. So, I mean, perhaps a letter on that, encouraging, not encouraging, but supporting going to 55% and encouraging our representatives to stay at 55% in subsequent years might be appropriate. I mean, I can try to write something up if we get a.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, we've been talking about this for years and years. So the fact that we're finally here, it doesn't hurt to have a letter that you could just send out. I think that's appropriate, and you could write it on behalf of the board and just send it that, yes, we appreciate the 55. Let's keep it there and let's make this the mainstay going forward.
Okay, can I do that? Okay, very good. I don't know if we need a vote on this or I'll just do it as a sense of the board is supportive of this. So, okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Lorna. 7.2, have a high school building project update. Patrick?
Yes, hopefully you saw as you came in tonight, the canopy out front, it's not completely done, but I think it adds a nice touch aesthetically to the building. So that'll be done by the end of this week. And then outside, just, more seating that needs to be done, some landscaping, paving out back by the turf field. There's window testing going on this week. We have a random set of windows that we're testing so that we can apply that to the rest of the building. A lot of furniture replacement items are coming in right now, things that maybe came in broken that are being replaced, and some additional furniture. And then just training on the controls. Dave is receiving more training on the heating and cooling. It's a good time to do that. Tomorrow at noon, we have the DOE team coming down here for a visit, which will be kind of exciting. It's the team from day one. And one person comes to all of our meetings, but the other 5 or 6, there's a finance person and there's the head of the whole facilities department for the state of Maine. So we'll do that tomorrow. On the, I guess this is the most appropriate time to mention it, but this building obviously has central air conditioning, but some of our other buildings don't. And that heat that we had in that second week of June, maybe, was difficult in not just one school, but in a couple of different schools. So we are, gathering some data, some information that we'll bring back to our facilities committee soon, and then back to the board. And mostly, third floor at Woolwich and third floor, roughly, it's a little different, but third level at BMS, and the second floor at Dyke Newell. Those were the hottest, the warmest spots, I guess I would say, throughout the district. So we're going to try to, again, gather some data on that, which includes costs as well, just to be able to have a discussion about.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Any questions of Patrick?
Just that I talked to
Yeah.
Dave Richards earlier about the ventilation issue because there was some legislation, I think it was, that was surfacing for minimum standards. And he assured me that our current buildings meet state minimum standards easily. And he's on top of it. So I was pleased to report that.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And we look forward to Dave's report on those additional spaces. Yeah, I did. I wanted to. I meant to mention, although we haven't planned it yet or set the date, but once the canopy goes up, I mean, we've been holding off on a ribbon cutting, so to speak, for this building, even though we've had students in here obviously since February. But we were waiting for the particularly the exterior of the building to be in its final form. So once that canopy goes up, we're going to start to look for a date that we can open the building to the public, to our elected officials, and finally do the hard, and with the scissors, and finally do a hard opening. I know it's been COVID has disrupted a lot of things, and we can blame this one on COVID, I suppose, but getting that canopy up was really, we felt was important to give everyone the full visual impact of what this building's going to be like from the exterior. So we are going to do that opening probably in September, the first part of September as the kids get back. So. Okay, item 8.0, superintendent's report. 8.1, good news, Patrick?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this once before to you, but the main seal of biliteracy, we had 7 students at Morse that received that honor. And it's really graduating seniors who are proficient in not only English, but at least one additional language, something that I wasn't able to master. And so they've earned that distinction, and they had to take an approved assessment in order to do that. Again, it gives them an edge in college application, but also just in general in careers, and also at the University of Maine system, they receive credits if they get this seal of biliteracy. And again, we had 7 students, and I'd just like to congratulate them and also our foreign language teachers. And Morse is one of 28 schools that participate in this program. Other things, just 2 other things. This year we had 82 scholarships. I think you saw that in Eric's report at scholarship night, totaling $272,000. And then you couple that with local businesses and state and national scholarships, and we had $389,000. So we're just very grateful for the alumni support that we have in the community support. And then last week we had our 2nd year of the summer bridge program here at CTE, and we had 50 students, 9th and 10th grader incoming students from AOS 93 in Wiscasset and RSU1, and they spent one day in 5 different programs learning new skills. And again, this experience is made possible by our MELMAC grant. And that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Any questions of Patrick? No? Okay, thanks. Item 8.2, financial report. Deb, good to see you, Deb.
Hey, the room is beautiful. Last time I walked through here, it was just like all under construction, so it's nice to see it all done. Tonight, we're looking at the month of May is in your report. So we're in the 11th month. And we've spent almost 31 million, with another 4.5 million encumbered for the remaining pay periods. So there's 6 remaining pay periods from this report. But as, you know, I'm doing my work in the office now. I'm finishing up June and trying to finalize everything and get ready for the next year. And I think we're in a really good place financially. Obviously, our grants have helped with that, but we should end the year in a good place. Revenues are coming in just as expected. The auditors were in last week to start the process. They come back in November for a week and finish things up. So that we got started and it's all going well. I know that you asked for some information on grants, so I've included a page on the grants. And so basically we were looking at 5 different grants. I have to say that I was very pleased today to submit the final invoice for CRF1. So this report shows that there's about 7,300 left, but actually as of the end of June, there's about $600. So we pretty much spent all of that money. Also CRF2, I'll have one more invoice on that. And this report shows 600,000, but we're really going to be down to like 90. And then ESERF 2, 1.8 million. That's where the majority of our additional staffing for next year will come from that. And then finally, the American Rescue Plan, that's the 4 million. And we're still waiting for the applications to open up for that. So then we'll come up with the plan of action to do with that. So all is good in the grant world. It will be nice. It's wonderful to have the additional money, but it's wonderful to have 2 of them down. Morse High School, we're under $1 million. So we're nearing the end of that $75 million project. And we're within budget for everything that we wanted to do there. So. And Steve asked about the additional state subsidy that is supposed to be coming. And as soon as we find out the details with that, then basically the way we'd handle it would be reduce any assessment that you'll be signing the assessments tonight for the town. So we would adjust those for that funding. Then, questions?
Okay, thanks, Deb. Any questions of Deb? I just a question on the high school, and maybe Patrick too. Is there a final audit that we have to do on the high school?
Yes.
The financial audit?
Yeah, they'll come down from the state. It's a lot different than when we had Woolwich. Woolwich came down from the state. It was almost like 6 years later. And it's like, you know, trying to remember everything at cross between Ruthie and myself. So it was a little bit challenging, but they came up with a different process this time that we've been using. And basically I submit a spreadsheet and every invoice monthly to them. So they're reviewing things throughout the whole process. So, so I think we should be pretty much right on target.
Okay. Jen? Yep.
Deb, is there any impact to the budget if we're going to change how we're handling food service from a pay per meal to a community feed option? Does that impact anything going forward in terms of our budgeting process?
Well, it impacted it this year as far as we had to bring in 100,000 more. And that shows on your financial report, I think, for food service. It may actually show in June. But the reimbursement rates, supposedly it's all going to take care of itself. Now, this year it was a little bit different, and but they assure us that that's what's going to happen. So hopefully we won't have to ask for a higher local appropriation. We won't be starting in the negative like we had a couple of years ago. So that was the reason for bringing in more this year. But so we're hopeful that, it will all pan out.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Deb? If not, thank you very much, Deb. Thanks. Okay, item 9.0, we have under old business, that it is not marked as action, but Patrick, old business?
No, new business.
No, I said old business.
Yeah.
But we are going to take action on those policies that Patrick distributed tonight. That I guess Vita distributed by electronic, by email. So we have for second reading under old business, several policies, and I will read them all. If we can take them all at once, that'd be great. We have immunization requirements for students entering RSU1. That's policy JLCB. Purchasing and contracting procurement staff code of conduct, policy DJH. And then earned paid leave, policy GBP. So those are all under as second reading. Do I have a motion to adopt those policies?
Move to adopt.
I have a motion by Lou, second by Jen. Any questions on those policies? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 10.0, new business. 10.1, personnel item. We have one nomination for a teaching position. Patrick?
Yeah, it's my pleasure to nominate Ivy Sheehan. She is currently a grade 7 teacher at York Middle School. And we're nominating her for grade 6 science teacher at BMS. And we had 8 applicants and we interviewed 4 people you can see in the backup. So it's our pleasure to nominate her this evening.
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
I need you guys to.
We need an official.
Yeah. Okay, any questions of Patrick on the nomination? All in favor? Oh, no, excuse me, I need a motion.
I'll move to accept.
Okay, we have a motion by Lou, second by, I'll go to Jamie this time, second by Jamie. All in favor? Any opposed? No, okay, thanks. Item 10.2, we have to authorize a lease purchase of technology equipment, and this again is an action item. Dean, do you have anything you want to talk about this, or?
If you have any questions, this is basically the lease that we enter into every 3 to 4 years for student equipment, primarily instructional technologies.
Any questions of Dean? Yep, Lorna?
Hi, Dean. This is Mario. Probably just a reminder. So this is more hardware, not software.
Correct, yes. This is
Okay.
This is entirely hardware.
Yep. Okay. That was it. Thanks.
Any other?
Just to remind the board, I mean, you can see it on the lease, but 3 years, 1.5% Gorham savings or Gorham lease savings. So,
These are I'm getting confused. So this is the Chromebook?
Yes,
Or
this is.
These are the continuing, so does that mean getting new ones? Well, I mean, the kids still are keeping theirs this summer, right? So is it leasing what we already have? Are we getting new things or?
No, I'm sorry. This will be for a refresh of the student technology.
Okay,
So every student will be getting a new Chromebook. Hopefully in the fall. It's really right now, supply is such that it's difficult to know exactly when they'll actually show up. But
oh, okay, so that's why you were saying they could keep them for the summer, and then when they bring them back, they would get,
yes.
once
Yeah.
they come in, but yeah, because of COVID, everything's all screwed up with
Yeah, well,
timing.
we basically encourage families to keep the Chromebooks that
Right.
are already in their possession so that they can continue to study during the summer,
Yep.
access the resources that we have available to them.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dean? No? Okay, so we have, again, included in that material that Patrick distributed earlier. We have a motion.
Want me to read it?
If Luke could make that.
Yeah. No, I'm not reading more. Not reading more than that, Patrick. Sorry. I move that the resolution entitled "Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of Technology Equipment in the principal amount of $554,000 be adopted in form presented to this meeting."
Okay, so we have a motion by Lou. Do I have a second? A second by Lorna. Any other questions of Dean on this? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10.3. We have kind of a late starting proposal recommendation from the administration to create a high school self-contained behavioral program, and this is going to be an action item. You want to kick this off? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I believe everybody has a copy in their board backup of the proposal that I put together. So springtime is always a busy time for IEP meetings. And part of those meetings this spring in late May, we had meetings on students who are currently in out-of-district placements. At these meetings, it became pretty clear that the programs that they were currently in may not be the best fit for these students anymore. And 3 of the students that we met on, it was decided upon that they would need a different placement for the fall. So I just want to know one quick thing, that parents have been involved in the process of these IEP meetings in spring, and they're aware that we're going to be looking at different options for their students in the fall. If this program that I'm going to talk about in a little bit is approved by the board, the students' IEP teams would need to reconvene and then reconsider whether or not the program that we're proposing tonight would be a good fit. So there are a couple of steps to the process. But from our perspective, the students we are considering could be good fits for a high school self-contained behavior classroom, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. We've had good working relationships with the local day treatment programs, but the reality is that one of the programs is no longer accepting referrals, and another program doesn't really have a good peer group for the students that are in it. So we need to really look at other options for these students. And I think creating a program at Morse High would help us increase our continuum of services for kids in the district, especially at the high school level. So the proposed solution, as you can see in the backup, is to create a 9 through 12 self-contained behavior program at Morse. Ideally, this would start out serving up to 8 students. And the difference between this program and the current student support program would be that students in the current student support program are able to access classes in the mainstream, but they might need support in the student support program for breaks or a place to maybe take a specific class or receive social work services or utilize some coping skills. But the program we're proposing would basically look at creating a school within a school for a small group of students. They would receive all their academic instruction there. They would receive the related services, social work, if they had occupational therapy, speech services, those types of things, all within this classroom. And then when they met their behavior goals, they would, ideally our thought process is they would transition to that student support program that I mentioned, and then hopefully out in the mainstream setting. So it just gives us more of a continuum for the kids with emotional behavior issues. So just a little bit more, I guess, specifics about the program. It's not, and maybe some of you are familiar with this, a day treatment program. That's not our goal. Our goal is really to create a public school behavior program for students, not the day treatment programs that they may be currently in. I will just say the students that are coming back potentially are not students who we have to physically restrain, seclude, those types of things. That's not what we're looking to create here at Morse. So I just want to be upfront about that. If we did have a student come in with that level of need, I think we'd have to look elsewhere for that type of student. So in terms of staffing, as you can see in the proposal, I think we need to start out with a teacher and at least 2 ed techs. The teaching position, we'd be looking for someone with experience behavior at the secondary level, or maybe someone who's taught in a day treatment program who wants maybe a different path. And certification as a BCBA, so board certified behavior analyst, is a plus. We have a couple other behavior teachers in the district who have that certification. It's really helpful. For our ed techs, obviously experience with behavior and emotional needs, and then BHP certification, of behavioral health professional certification would be a plus. And once we hire staff, we would look to train them in safety care right off, so they would learn the de-escalation strategies that they would need to use with these students. And our goal would be to work with our social worker to create a program where we could train our own staff as BHPs, which we've talked about in the past. So some ongoing supervision there. Social work services would obviously be a big part of the program. And I think in talking with Eric, we've increased social work at the high school. I think we could utilize our existing staff. And we're really fortunate that one of our current social workers has worked in this type of program before, could help with program development and those types of things. So I think we're in good shape there. In terms of space, Eric and Devin and I have chatted. There's definitely room in this nice building here. We would not be requiring extensive renovations for any of the spaces. We would just really probably need to look at purchasing some furniture, dividers, and those types of things to create smaller spaces within a larger space. And then lastly, just the proposed funding source. It's a budget neutral type of thing because the students that we would bring back would offset costs and potentially even result in some cost savings for the district. So that's what I got. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay. Yep. Anita, do you have? You got to turn it.
Yeah, I did have a few questions, and you answered a few of them already, actually, Justin, so that was
Good.
helpful. Thank you. Let me find the list that I sent. Yeah, one of the it's a question, but it's also a concern as well. I feel like, I wonder if we're moving into this a little quickly, considering the particular group of students and their specialized needs and the program that they're coming from, because they're coming from a day treatment program into, and you made it clear yourself that this is going to be a focus on education.
So without going into too many specifics about the students for like confidentiality reasons, I would say that most of these students have met their goals within the day treatment setting and are ready to start that transition back to public school. But creating this program would give us that sort of step down from the day treatment program. I'm a little concerned that if we take these students right out of day treatment and put them in our regular student support program, that they wouldn't be a good fit for them, if that makes sense. It just gives us another option to see how they do as they train. Some of these kids have been unfortunately in outplacement since as early as early elementary school. So
right, and that makes perfect sense, I guess. But what my concern is that are they genuinely ready for that, and is this an appropriate move? And what if it sounds like if you could clarify that the parents this hasn't been mentioned to the parents yet.
It has, not this specific program, but the need for different types of programming. And honestly, at least two of these meetings, the topic of coming to Morse High School has come up because they've met those goals in the programs that they're in, and their staff feel like they're ready. But there's this, I don't feel that we necessarily have the supports in place for them if we don't create something like this. So.
And did the parents or students themselves have any questions or concerns? There are things that they brought up that they felt they would need to be part of this program to feel safe here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the issue of safety didn't necessarily come up, but it's tough. I'm trying to toe that line of confidentiality, but some of the students have expressed wanting to come back to Morse High School because they've done so well with their programs, or they just want to be part of their school community. Parents have been open to the idea of discussing not just the program here, but other programs. I mean, we weren't able to at these meetings say, hey, we're looking to create a program at Morse High School because this sort of came up after the fact. But I don't know if I'm answering your question as good as I can. I'm trying to walk that,
Yeah. I
that
understand.
confidentiality line. Yeah.
How about the teachers that may be impacted or be part of this program? Have any of them been spoken with or asked for their ideas or suggestions
So
as far as
we would be
programming?
hiring new staff for this. But I definitely sought input from our current student support teacher and administration at Morse before we brought this forward.
And what was their comfort level?
Very comfortable. The student support program at the high school was working with about 17 kids at one point. And so just to have this other layer of support, and I should mention, there's students in that program currently that would benefit from being in more of a self-contained setting. We're trying to do two things at once, and it's pretty difficult at times.
Let's see. Now, you talked a little bit about them being able to continue to receive some of their specialized services within that room. Can you talk a little bit more about how you plan to do that to ensure the continued quantity and quality of those services?
So we mentioned that we have a really talented social worker on staff who could continue to provide that service, which is obviously a huge part of this type of program. As far as the other services, typically at the high school level, when we get to occupational therapy, it's more of a consult, and we contract for that service with a local agency who provides it in our life skills programs and our other behavior programs. And those folks become part of the student's team, and I don't have any concerns about that happening in this program. And it really wouldn't be a significant expense. It's something that we sort of have budgeted through a local entitlement for contracted services. So I think it's something that we can pull off with our existing staff.
And our existing social worker here, she's pretty busy.
Right. So we have an additional social worker that we hired for the student support program.
Okay.
It was a day a week, and that position is the one we're looking to utilize for this position, not our full-time social worker at the high school.
And do you feel that our current, you said it's not likely that any of this group of students would need seclusion or restraint, but do you feel like our policies right now are adequate to what you will need? Or should we be looking at those?
I do. Actually, this time every year, we have to compile some information for the state on restraint and seclusion. And honestly, in this district, we do not do it very often. At the middle and high school level, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that we haven't had many in quite some time. So it's, not something that we, at the high school level, tend to have to worry about. And if we did have a student that needed that level of support, again, we would be looking probably for other options that could better support them.
And how about, just going forward, just one more question about professional development and clinical supervision. You mentioned the BHP training and the BCBA, and I was pleased to hear those things, but could you maybe describe that a little bit more?
Sure. I would start with what I mentioned before, start with our safety care training. So that's our district program regarding restraint and seclusion. But the more important part of that program is how to de-escalate students. And we provide that training for many staff across our district. So that would be one. And the BHP piece is something that we need to iron out the details, but essentially what they do in some other districts is use the social worker in the program to provide ongoing supervision training for the ed tech, so to speak, in the program. And I've had some initial discussions about that. And I think it's something that we should do for this program and possibly some of our other behavior programs once we get things off the ground. So it's just ongoing conversations about how to deal with student behavior.
Have you thought about bringing in any of the proactive solutions type of model, Ross Green's model at all? I know
not that specific model, but
it.
We're certainly open to the different approaches. Yeah.
More proactive approaches.
I mean, that and safety care again really is the reason we switched from MANT to safety care was exactly what you mentioned, was that it was way more proactive as opposed to reactive. And the focus of that program is on how to not end up in a restraint or seclusion.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I guess I'm thinking
Yeah.
even more proactive than that,
Yeah.
looking at what are the missing skills that the students have.
Yep.
So that we can avoid it becoming that kind of situation to begin with. I'm familiar with safety care and both. And they do have a lot of training on de-escalation.
Mhm.
But once you've reached the point of a student escalating, you've already missed your opportunity
Right.
for them to learn, both educationally and socially and emotionally.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In our other behavior programs, our staff have strategies to, get to know their students and again avoid those struggles that they might have. So, it's something that once we get the program up and running, hopefully we hire someone that has that skill set and can provide us with some ideas on how to best work with the students. So,
That's all that I have.
all right. Anyone else?
Okay, thanks, Anita. Any other, Jamie? Yeah, sure.
No.
Okay, thank you. So I'm very pleased to hear that we will be bringing students back into their community to be served by their community. So I'm supportive of the general concept. I just have some questions. And I think the first question is, what would this be called? We wouldn't be calling it a self-contained behavior program to
No,
students and families.
We come up with better names than that along the way. I mean, the
Sure.
high school program is the student support program. Our elementary program is called the HIDE program. This is just the general overview.
Sure.
We usually will tap into our teacher that we hire to help us come up with a better name.
Wonderful. Great. And then I guess one of my concerns was that when Morse hired that full-time social worker, it wasn't for this position, correct? So when they made the move from part-time to full-time for that new social worker.
So my understanding, a part of the position was, and then the additional time that we added was to work with other students in the building. And also that individuals work with students at Bath Middle School too. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my initial concern is if we hired that social worker to address
Yeah.
current needs,
Mhm.
and then we're adding a substantial need on top of that, I would worry that social worker might be stretched too thin too quickly.
No, I hear your concern, and it's something I think we would definitely need to keep an eye on. We want to keep the program small, so we at least initially think we could start there.
Sure.
Eric and I, when we talked today, he mentioned they're bringing in another private practice person into the building to pick up some kids, and one of our other social workers is going to have an intern, so there'll be some other coverage there. So
Okay.
hopefully with those, we're going to be needing obviously to provide a lot of
Sure.
social work support this upcoming year, but with those things in place, we might be in good shape at least to start out.
Okay. And then working with students who have a lot of behavioral needs, I know that sensory and movement is really important. So how do we address that here in this program?
I mean, that's an important part of all of our behavior programs. And again, it's hiring someone with the skill set that is able to recognize that is going to be critical. So yes, I mean, I don't know, I can't give you specifics on what that might look like, but that would be something we certainly would be asking and looking for in an interview for someone to be aware of that.
Sure. Okay. All right. As long as people aren't just
Yeah.
expected to be in a classroom all day.
No,
every day.
it sounds all, yeah. No.
And Jamie, I think
Yeah.
if we brought it back here, I mean, we're fortunate enough to be in this building now where we have
Right.
multiple spaces indoors as well as outdoor spaces that a teacher could utilize.
Wonderful. Great. And then I shared concerns about, de-escalate and what happens if someone does reach that level of needing additional support, and what are our policies around that, and maybe that's something we can dig into.
With any of these types of programs, each student at their IEP meeting, we would talk about a behavior intervention plan and a crisis plan to
Sure.
sort of touch
Okay.
on those issues. So that would be a part of their IEP.
Great. And then if you're creating a program that would serve up to 8 students, but right now we're sort of looking at 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
Would you need additional staffing if it did go all the way up to 8, or would this be sufficient?
I think this is a starting point, but it will depend on, I think, the dynamics of the room. But
Sure.
I think, in our other programs at the elementary level, which tend to sometimes be more self-contained because they're learning those coping skills, we've started out with 1 teacher, 2 ed techs, and sometimes we end up needing more. And sometimes we have a group that transitions maybe to another grade level, and we kind of move our ed techs around. So it's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on and make sure we have enough support.
Great. And then what about busing and hallway, like getting here in the morning? Is that all supervised or?
Yeah, I mean, typically we would, there could be special transportation. We would probably have our staff meet them at the bus or come up with a plan
Okay.
on where they're going to check in the morning. But,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Justin.
Thanks, Jamie. Any other? Yep, Jen?
Yes, hi. So I guess I'd reiterate some of what I've heard already in terms of, is the program 3 or 8? I thought it was 8.
So it's
start
up
with.
to 8. We feel like we could serve up to 8 students in this program.
Okay.
But we're talking about bringing 3 to 4 students back into the district.
To start the year
Yeah.
with 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me a little less worried about the impact on the social worker, but I
Yeah.
really feel like that social worker, those extra hours we approved, were because of the environment that we're in right now. What we're going to see next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're going to bring a new program in, I would like to see specific resources brought in to address that
The social
program,
work piece.
completely separate about what we've been convinced that we need
Mm.
for the current student body. And also, this is a different kind of program. It's a new program for us. So I would guess I want to ask from you, you start a new program, we've not done this before. Do you have a specific model that you're working from another school? And therefore, can you tell us how many hours this is going to take from you? Because I'm really concerned about adding another thing to your plate, given the year that we have before us. And yeah, so I just like.
Yeah, there's a lot of models out there. This is a pretty, I would just say, common program in a lot of public high schools. And there's certainly local districts that we could tap into and visit and see what their style and approach with these types of students is. Again, I want to go back to, and this, even when we hired for the Dykenol program, when we started up, that was 5 or 6 years ago now. It really hinges on the person that we hire. That's absolutely critical. We want to hire someone that has the experience with program development, with being involved in a behavior program, and we'll tap into their expertise on how to get it off the ground. So,
Okay, I guess I'm looking for. I feel like I would like you to have more specifics for us today, because if we're voting on something, it's a big decision, and also I would want to know that you've got those specifics as the program's supervisor.
Sure.
And really, this is how we're going to handle a lot of these decisions. And also that idea of how many more hours this is going to take from you, because I have no sense of any feedback from how this would impact all the rest of our special ed services from that you provide for everybody else, because as you add more things onto your plate, you're less available. I mean, a new program, you don't know. I mean, 3 to 4 kids, maybe not, but just a consideration. The expenses that you talked about, you said additional furniture. So you said there could be a $40,000 savings. Did that include the additional furniture
it
costs?
did. No, I was talking specifically about tuition and staff there. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Do we have specific documentation from these other programs that says they will not take our students next year? Is this just we're thinking about it, maybe we can't handle new students, maybe this isn't the right thing? I mean, is there?
So walking the fine line with confidentiality, I can say that one of the placements has told us that they are no longer accepting referrals except for students within their own district. And the other placement just really has sort of moved away from working with high school level students that have emotional and behavioral challenges, and is more focused on the autism spectrum. So there's not necessarily a peer group for the students that we like to bring back into the district. And that's really important. If they're going to make progress, they have to have kids to interact with. So it comes down to, us creating a program where they can do that.
So I guess I don't really understand the placement, the referral replacement. So I guess I'm going to ask this very specific. Have these programs said that we will not service these kids next year?
Yes.
They have said that. Okay, great.
They have said that they don't, they're all different scenarios, Jen, and I'm not, again, confidentiality, but for each respective student, they're no longer a good fit necessarily, and we need to look at other options. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this program impact the program that we're doing in Wiscasset?
It does not, no. That program will serve as sort of another option for students who may not be successful in the program that we're proposing today. I don't think it would be wise of us to cut any ties with Wiscasset, because right now high school placements are very limited. As I mentioned, the one program not taking referrals anymore, and the other program without peer groups for these kids with these types of issues, we don't really have anywhere. I mean, that's the other thing I just want to be clear with the board about. I mean, you could vote no tonight, but I'm not sure where we're going to program for these students next year. Just being very upfront with you, I think we're kind of in a corner, and we may have to build the plane as we fly it a little bit. But I think if we find the right staff person, like we have in all our other behavior programs, we find some great people.
If we don't find that person, what happens then?
Then I'm looking all over the state for a potential placement.
Okay.
And that can happen. I mean, we could send kids as far away as Saco to Sweetser and those types of things, but obviously that's not an ideal situation. Yeah.
And Wiscasset's not a solution either?
What's that?
With the Wiscasset program is not a solution?
It is. We currently have 3 students there, and remember, we share that with 4 other districts. So there may be 12 slots there, and we don't get all of those slots necessarily. So we do have students going to that program, and we do have students that are currently successful in that program. So it's not something it's something we definitely want to continue.
Okay. And for transportation, the question about transportation was, so are these students going to be needing separate, would these be students coming, which your transportation solution not have them be involved with the other students? Would it be a separate?
It all depends. I mean, we talk about that IEP team meetings. Believe it or not, some kids do fine on the bus. Some kids obviously don't. It just depends on the specific student, but we can certainly add special transportation to their IEP, and that would, maybe they come in on a van. Okay. Sometimes parents will decide that it's better to drop their kid off. It's not a one size fits all approach, but we do have options for transportation.
Okay. And the last thing is that you mentioned it was like a school within a school, and that makes me think about a charter school. That's how we talk about charter schools, which public schools can have charter schools within their programs. That's something. But so if we offer this to a certain amount of students and somebody else wants into this program, can we say no? I mean, do we have to offer?
So part of those specifics you were asking for would be us developing a criteria for entrance into the program. And we've done that with all of our other behavior support programs. We have a referral process. We have to gather information on the student, have an IEP team meeting, talk about the referral, make sure it's a good fit. So we have established processes for that in all of our other programs, and we would do the same thing for this program.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know this doesn't match our, I guess, maybe typical process of planning for something, but hopefully, this is about timing with some of the spring IEPs that were held, and to Justin's credit, trying to do what he feels and the IEP teams feel are in the best interests of students and their families. We may not have all the nitty gritty of the details of a schedule and everything, but we do have some very talented individuals that have created programs at the elementary, middle school, and high school, even though they're a little bit different. And we certainly would lean on our experienced staff to, help build a program at the high school. For different these students that would be a good fit for them.
Yeah, it's really critical that we find the right person. If we don't, Patrick's correct. We'd have to look at other options. So Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yep, Anita? You-
It's just, I would guess I would like to raise maybe a consideration for you and see how
Sure.
what you think of it. You know, as you're developing this program, I know there's a timing thing and it's more of an urgent thing to get it up
Yeah.
and running. But as you move forward with it and developing the model that you're going to use in this program, would you be willing to maybe pull together a committee of people to really explore how to enhance the program over
Yeah.
time and improve it, to
Yeah,
develop some standards and some
Yeah.
benchmarks, some things to really strive for, to look at what would ideally, what we'd really want to achieve as a district through this program in the future,
Yeah, absolutely.
to make it the best it can be.
This is sort of a, maybe not as extensive as what you're talking about, but for each of our programs, we have a program development team. And it usually consists of obviously the teacher in the program, our school psychologist, the principal, myself. And we meet at least once a month to talk about students in the program related issues. So we would set up the same model here, but I think what you're talking about is like sort of a longer term like study. And I think that's a good idea for us to look
Bringing
at
in-
for all of our programs, not just creating this one.
Yeah, maybe even bringing in a parent
Sure.
or
Getting feedback.
and other professionals in that have done other models and stuff.
Definitely.
Okay.
Appreciate the idea.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, when Patrick first mentioned this, phone conversation, it is a late starter. It's something that typically we would be discussing in February or March as a ramp up to the budget. But I think as Justin indicated, there are, circumstances here, in terms of finding appropriate placements for these students that kind of led us to, or led the administration to the recommendation to set up this self-contained program. That said, if people feel that there still are some unanswered questions out there that we would like to come back, I think we need to make a decision on this one way or the other in a timely way so that we can, secure those resources, staff primarily to get the program off. But if there's, a need for a little bit more information on what the program, beyond what Justin has provided of what the program is going to look like, we can come back in a special session and discuss this again. I mean, that's always the possibility. I think that the alternative of looking for out of district placements is probably not the better way to go. To have to look further afield than what we've already identified for these students in the past in terms of placements. But so if there are more questions, we can keep Justin up there. If not, I think we need to decide whether we're comfortable. Jen?
I guess if I was to vote in support of this, I would like an update in August.
Sure.
I would like that if the school community is going to have a new program that they're not aware of, they're all gone now for summer, but if the school community is going to have a different program, that whole community, all participants in this community who are going to be here, have a way to kind of give you feedback about that. I mean, faculty, staff, the people that are in the school, if there's a new program that's going to be in their building, I think communication, we've learned very much is important. So I would hope that there could be some communication with them about this so they could give you some input, and that there is, when you hire this person, is it a one-year pilot program kind of hiring? I mean, we don't know if this is going to work or not, right? So is it only a one-year contract that we give them?
That wasn't, I think that would probably be difficult to find somebody to stay committed, that is working under a one-year contract. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, I think it would be
yeah.
just a regular contract, and then
Yeah.
if the program didn't work out like we expected or the board expected, then we would do away with the program and, and the person that, is associated with the program, but to find a quality person. And again, I think our goal is to try to find a place for our students that has some stability, and not have them come here for a year if we, and then go to a different placement outside. So we can certainly, if this was approved tonight, I mean, I would think even by the end of July, we would give you an update, let you know if we found someone of quality, or whether we have to make a decision that we're going to have to, we're not going to find anybody, and we're going to have to try to go in a different direction of finding placements for another year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'd hope that we get a little more specifics and a little less fly by the seat of the pants,
Yeah.
like build the ship while you sail it.
Yeah.
Just because it's something we've never done before, because it is a significant difference, and I'm concerned with all the needs that we will have next year already on the student body that we've kind of decided on and talked about serving. That we're adding another component here, and I do understand that there's timing issues. I just I guess if I vote to support this, I would really rely on the reporting and the planning and getting that information prior to first day of school to help everyone kind of get comfortable with it.
Each time we've started a new program, within the first several months, we develop a program handbook, which would outline all the details I think you're looking for. I myself do not create all those details. I rely on the staff that we hire that have the expertise to help me create those details. So I would say that, by the beginning of the school year, we could provide you with some more detail on what it's going to exactly look like. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I'd like to entertain a motion then to approve the creation.
I'll move
We'll
approval.
call it a self-contained behavioral
I'm sorry.
program, even though the name will change. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the development of the new behavioral program to be situated here at Morse High School.
okay.
And I'll trust staff to bring back an outline and a detail on how they're going to progress, and request that be brought to us in August, before the school year starts.
Thanks, Bill. Lauren, a second? Okay, second. Any further discussion on it? If not, no? Okay, thanks. Justin, all in favor? I guess we better vote on
Can I just say something very
sure.
quickly?
Yep.
In that if we do need more social work, that our board would support that without too much hesitation, especially if there's a cost savings for this program coming in-house.
Yeah, I think with that detail in August of details of the program, we also can give you a detailed budget, and hopefully, this cost savings will be there. And if we have a recommendation for additional for additional services for social work, we would build those in and run that by you.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Okay, item 10.4, we have the fall planning update, and this will be our discussion of pool testing and the indoor mask wearing policy. Patrick, Katie, whoever.
Yeah, I'm going to let Katie lead this, and Dr. Hanna is on the line. I think she's been on there for quite a while, so I apologize. But I think we'll start with pool testing and hear from Dr. Hanna, hear from Katie. I think they've talked about what order they're going to go in, talk about the survey, talk about the reason for doing it, pros and cons, and and hopefully answer any questions that you might have, and maybe make a decision tonight on whether that's something we want to do. I know there's a few school districts that are implementing it this summer as a kind of a trial with less students, and then there's some other districts that are looking to do it, start up in the fall. So I'll turn it over to Katie at this point.
Okay, so to start with the pooled testing, the results of the pooled testing are as they were last time because I closed the survey. So just to remind everybody, As our public commenter said, we needed to have 30% support. This went out to both staff and to families. 378 people responded, and it was 65% in support of pool testing, 35% not in support. At the breakdown, in case people are wondering, what did that mean for our staff members? 84% of staff were in support of pool testing moving forward. Obviously, I think the two biggest factors in terms of pros versus cons that we talked about last time. I'm not going to go as great into detail before I hand it over to Dr. Hannah to get her recommendation, as I did last time, just for the sake of timing. But I would think the two pros that we were talking about before were not having to socially distance and not having to quarantine as close contacts. We now don't have to socially distance anyways because that requirement changed. And so the biggest pro would be if someone is a close contact, then we would not have to have them out of school or activities for the 10 days that they normally would be. The way the program works, it would be the person who actually has the virus who would be home. And so that would be one of the pros. I think on the con side, one of the biggest things we were worried about was, how do we staff this? What does this mean for staff? But as we told the board last time, if we do move forward with this item, we would actually hire someone to completely do this. So it wouldn't be an impact on nurses or really our staff other than, I would guess in the few weeks having watched the webinar, the students have to learn the procedure like they learn anything. But once they know it, they said it takes even a kindergarten class maybe 10 minutes. Older kids, the person's in and out doing the swabs in 5 minutes or less. We did check in with the SEA and no concerns came up from our teachers around having to take a little bit of class time for this procedure. And so, at this point, I think that's all the information I have to share in particular about this, unless you have questions, because we went into the detail before. And also, Dr. Hannah's obviously here and knows much more about this than I do. So, Lorna, do you want to ask your question?
Go ahead.
Just on the respondents, Katie, and you might not have it right there. So 378 respondents, but that included staff.
Yes.
So am I to assume that maybe 190 of this 378 is staff?
No, the staff was around 80.
Okay, so so about 300 people in the community responded.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a single response, do you know? Or is it if they had 2 kids or 3 kids? Because you had to fill out a survey for each kid, is that right?
It's per child.
So
there are a couple people in there who might have two responses.
So it's possible that we have far less than 300 people from the entire community that responded on pool testing?
Oh, it's very much possible. 375 is not a great number, but the reason why we did it broadly like that is just to see, we just needed to see how close we were to the 30%. Because we're so significantly farther above it, and if you break it down school by school, you are as well. It's very unlikely that a school would be under the 30%. We would still, because this was just a data collection piece just to make sure we even had enough community support for you guys to talk about this. Should you choose to act on it and choose to move forward with it, we would then actually need to send this to each child and to each staff member to receive a response from everybody to know if there are any schools that would be opting out because we don't have the 30%.
Okay.
And also just to see, who we're actually going to do the testing on because they would need to set up a schedule and whatnot. So this was just an initial, how close are we to the 30%? Should we
Okay.
not even consider this at all?
Okay, so there's that extra step of actually just obviously having to, ultimately, everyone's going to have to choose, are you opting in or not?
Correct.
And then and I know Dr. Hannah's waiting, and then just it's potential that we could look at this by grade because we have a significant amount of kids that are vaccinated.
Yeah, I think we're not by grade, but by school, except for Woolwich, it would be by parts of their school. So their elementary versus their
Okay.
middle school.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Quick question. Sure. Just so if we do the pool testing, how often is it?
It's once a week.
It'd be once a week. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, Dr. Hannah, you're out there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to have kept you waiting for so long.
No.
Do you have, what can you add to this to help us get to this decision? So,
I think Katie summarized this well. I mean, I think our goal as we head into this new school year is really to find a way to keep our kids in the classroom as much as we can. And so anything that we can do to promote that makes sense. And I think the biggest selling point for me for this testing, number one, it's accurate. It's a PCR test. So I like that, that we're getting accurate information. But most importantly, it's if you have a situation where you have one child in a classroom, rather than having the entire classroom quarantine for a long period of time, miss in-person teaching time where they really are learning best, they can stay in the classroom and they'll have a test. If they're in a classroom where someone has tested positive, they will have they'll have a follow-up test as they're trying to figure out who has it, but they can monitor for symptoms. They know to monitor for symptoms. That there's follow-up testing that can be done. So it gives us the option to have kids stay in the classroom.
okay, thank you. Any questions of Dr. Hannah? Yeah, Lauren.
Hi, Dr. Hannah. I just wanted to, and I've talked about this with Katie in the past too, when we've had our introductory to this. So for the pool testing, I was watching some of the videos that were, some of them are made before our vaccine was even available. So I just want to make sure that I understand if you opt out of pool testing because your child is vaccinated, that child, obviously fully vaccinated, does not have to quarantine either. Katie has confirmed that with me before.
That's correct.
And then I guess the only thing too, if one of you could speak to this kind of keeping track on who's vaccinated and who's not. How involved is that? How involved is that with the pool testing? And for those who, because some of the videos kind of said, whether you're vaccinated or not, you should really participate. And I struggle with that. So where are we at with kind of keeping track? Who is, like, for those who aren't participating, knowing who's vaccinated?
So in terms of, having kids who are vaccinated participate in the pool testing, the reason for it, I think, is twofold. Number one, no vaccine is perfect. So you can have vaccine failure. And in that situation, you're able to catch those kids before they potentially have a chance to spread it to someone else. And it's not just that we're looking at spread within a classroom. These kids go out and they hang out with friends after school. So you're trying to prevent spread that way. The other part of it's just confidentiality. If everybody who's vaccinated opts out, there's no confidentiality for those who did. So I think it's important that we treat everybody kind of as a whole here for lots of different reasons. But but from a medical perspective, no vaccine is perfect. So if we're trying to catch a transmissible disease, I think we want to have everybody included in it.
So
are you worried about the cost of it for?
No, not at all. No, I'm worried about mixed messaging for some of our older kids who have, and even from hearing, the rest of the world is kind of acknowledging it's not 100%, but kind of operating like, I don't have to do what unvaccinated people do. But the concern really is, I don't know that pool testing is 100%, is it? I mean, can you speak to somewhere along the way, the viral load that might be picked up? Is it true that it's not transmissible at that point? Did I hear that somewhere along the way?
Yeah, so when you look at the PCR testing that they're doing, it starts to detect the viral particles at a very early stage. So before looking at the studies that they've done, it looks like it's before they can transmit the virus. So you're catching it early enough so that you're unlikely to transmit to others. And this has been looked at, some of the colleges, as Mr. Pratt said, that, some of the colleges here in Maine did it, but they also have been doing it in Massachusetts, in the public schools in Baltimore, I believe. I mean, there are a number of different schools who have kind of looked at this, and you really do catch cases before they're transmitting it to other people.
Okay, well, that was pretty much my questions. I mean, the fact that it is voluntary is good, and I'm happy that there is an opportunity for everyone in the community to weigh in on it more directly. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Thanks. Any other questions on this? I think we'll probably take two. Okay, Jan, I'm sorry.
And it has to do with the masking too, but I guess, Dr. Hannah, I'm from Woolwich, and I've worked in Woolwich Central School in the past, and so we have a unique situation there where we've got a combination of middle school and littles. So could you speak to any kind of different kind of impact that pool testing or masking, if we're talk to that, or that would have in that kind of school scenario that would be different than our other schools that don't have a mix of age of students?
Well, I think the goal, even in kids who are eligible for the vaccine, is still for them to be able to participate in the pooled testing. But you're absolutely right. It's probably more important in the kids under the age of 12 who are not eligible for a vaccine yet. So those kids are at a higher risk of contracting this. But even if you look at kids who are vaccinated, I pulled up the vaccination rates in Saginaw County, the most recent ones that were on the CDC site. And for Saginaw, we have 40% of our 12 to 15-year-olds who have completed the vaccination series. 52% of the 16 to 19-year-olds have completed that series. So even in the older grades where those kids are eligible for the vaccine, there's still a large number of kids who have not been vaccinated.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? I think if I'd like to, okay. To mask, well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, my preference would be to decide on pool testing, and then we'll move on to a masking discussion. Okay. Any question? Yep, Lorna?
I guess, so we put feelers out and we think we're going to have 30%, but if we vote, it's to do it when we really don't know exactly what our percentages are.
I
Is
can
that right?
clarify that. It would be the vote to do it in places we find out are 30%
Okay.
and above. And also the vote needs to allow for the posting of the new hire for the pool testing coordinator.
Gotcha.
We did, the application was already turned in because that needed to be done before our nurses left, but we weren't locked in should we have been approved. So this, obviously we knew this vote was going to happen, but those would be the two next steps to see where we do have 30% for sure, and also posting a position.
And just to clarify, I wasn't trying to be flippant by pool testing isn't 100%, but if you have some people opt out, I mean, you're not really conceivably catching those cases either. So I think the goal is just I'm just really interested to see what our actual numbers are on who opts in and how that will help ultimately in catching as many cases as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just to be clear, it may well be that, well, I don't think it's likely, but it's possible that, not all buildings will
Correct.
be participating.
Right.
If we don't get to 30. So,
Yeah.
we may end up in a situation where some of our schools are participating and others not. I mean, I don't personally think that'll be the case, but that's a possible outcome here.
Okay.
So, are there any further questions other than that? So Katie would like a motion that we approve to go forward with pool testing, and as part of that motion that we authorize the posting of for a coordinator for pool testing. Is that right, Katie? And just to clarify, this will be paid for out of some of those emergency federal funding. So there's no immediate cost to the district on this program. Okay. Okay, so can I get a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll move motion to everything you said, or do I have to repeat it?
Well,
Okay, good.
It was out there.
It was out there, so I think we're good. Okay.
Okay. Jamie is the second. Okay, so we are voting to authorize pool testing and to post for a coordinator. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you. So
Okay.
now we'll move on to the discussion of masking. Katie?
So
back to you.
I can just start real quick, is just to remind people that may be watching, is just that the, Governor Mills' state of civil emergency will end at the end of, when is June 30th? Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And again, that is where the CDC will continue to strongly recommend, but not require, that unvaccinated people, including those 12 years of age who are not eligible, wear face coverings indoors. So that's, again, tonight we'd like to have the conversation, talk with Dr. Hannah, also talk about, we're entering summer school. In some places it started today, but what we want to do for the summer programming, and then what do we want to do for the fall? So I'll turn it over to Katie at this point.
So just like Patrick said, as we know, all year we've all been masked, except for most recently outside, both staff and students didn't have to wear masks. So, I think in terms of wearing these or not, the outside part is already taken care of. So really, just for the purposes of this discussion, we're just talking about inside masking. And obviously the wording from the DOE notice leaves, the decision essentially up to all of you and us as administrators. I think first we should hear from Dr. Hannah of what she thinks in terms of the science piece. And I think the trickiest part here will be, where the rubber hits the road, what should you do in terms of science, and what can you do in terms of policy and procedure, and also what's best for kids on many different levels. This is a very tricky topic, I think. So why don't we hear from Dr. Hannah first, just about her thoughts on the new wiggle room here.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. This is just very tricky. There are a lot of emotions around having kids return to school in masks. I have a son in the district. He attends Morse, and as a parent, I want him to go back to school, and I want this just to feel normal. As a pediatrician, I don't think that we're at the point where we can recommend that unvaccinated people, staff, kids, go back to school unmasked while indoors. I think we've got a couple of components to look at. One is just that vaccination rate that we just talked about when we were discussing the pooled testing. Children under the age of 12 are not eligible for the vaccine at all. And hopefully that will be an option for them in the fall. But even after they start the vaccine series, it's a minimum of 5 weeks from when they receive their first dose to when they are considered fully vaccinated and immune. because you have to get a second dose, and then it's another couple of weeks after your second dose for immunity. So there's going to be a lag, even if they said, okay, September, all of those kids can get the vaccine. It's not really September that they're immune, and they'll be back in school sitting next to each other because they've eliminated the physical distancing component for kids. And I'm glad that they're going to be back in school. I am thrilled, 100% thrilled about that. Even among kids who are eligible for the vaccine, again, our rates are, I think the state of Maine is doing great compared to the rest of the country. I am so thrilled to be here and not elsewhere. But when you look at 40% of 12 to 15-year-olds who have had the vaccine and 52% of the older kids, I mean, that's a lot of kids who still haven't had a vaccine yet, who are at risk. And the CDC, even though they don't have a mandate for a mask, they still are strongly recommending that all of us, whether you're a child or an adult, if you're not vaccinated, you ought to wear a mask when indoors. I think the other part that I'm worried about is what the emerging variants mean for our kids. So Delta is the one that we hear a lot about in the news that has increased in our country. A little over a month ago, it was about 1.2% of the cases of COVID-19. Now we're at about 20%. And if you look at England and Scotland and their rates right now, and again, that's across the pond, but they started a little ahead of us with this variant. It's about 99% of what they're seeing, and it's significantly more transmissible and about twice as likely to cause a person to wind up in the hospital. So there are risks with what's coming our way. I think that with every day that we send our kids to school, we should be looking at the science and saying, is this the time that we say we get rid of the mask? Because I think that's our goal, or that would be my recommended goal, is that we get rid of the mask. I just don't think that we're there yet safely from a science perspective. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Dr. Hannah. Katie, do you have anything you want to?
So, Dr. Hannah, just a clarifying question. I know you're here just to share the science, and do you feel at this point that if we said if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, would you feel comfortable with that?
I would.
Okay.
The vaccines, when they've looked at the effectiveness of the vaccines, even against the Delta variant, it's really quite protective. So yeah, I do think that vaccinated individuals should be able to go without a mask. The policy part of it, as we've talked about before, that's up to you to decide how you do that.
Okay. So I guess where this leaves us in my mind is a discussion, because I think it lands on the policy piece, and I'll just mention a few things. I think first is if we go, if we follow Dr. Hannah's recommendation that those who've been vaccinated don't have to wear a mask, I think where that becomes tough is in 6 through 12, where it's an option for those to be vaccinated. And of course, with teachers, I think this was said before, no one wants to police who's been vaccinated and not, and we don't plan to do that. So I think that's kind of what needs to be discussed here is if we're going to loosen this requirement, it would potentially mean, it's a choice and a trust issue for students and their families, or teachers and their families. And we need to think about the impacts of that within our classrooms, on our community, with our staff. And so I kind of just want to leave that part open, because I think what we decide 6 through 12 maybe then helps us think about what to do for the younger students. If we could just talk about that first.
Okay, what are people's thoughts on this? Jamie?
I don't know that I have questions yet. I think my comments stem from listening to parents who are, in tears over the thought of having to wear masks in the fall, or their children. And everywhere else that we go, there is no mask. So I can sit shoulder to shoulder with someone at a Red Sox game who may or may not be vaccinated, and kids are showing up together to go to school, and they walk through the doors and put the mask on. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem, I don't know what the word is, logical. And if we are going to be doing the pooled testing, could that help us get ahead of, and obviously, just watching what the recommendations from the CDC are, if we start to see an increase in the variants, to, knowing that it could change depending on what's happening, just like it has been all along. But I think it's just hard for me to say to a student that don't have to wear it anywhere else until you walk through the doors. Just, to me, my personal, it's a tough thing to say.
Okay.
Lou?
Yeah, I have to agree with Jamie on that. We've reached a point where the kids are everywhere, everybody's all over the place, and masking has become optional. There's recommendations of, protect yourself. So if you aren't in the store that I run, I've got people come in, some are in masks still, and especially the younger kids, and some are not. But that's where we are, and I don't see how it helps. And I would agree, it's one of the reasons I thought the pool testing makes a lot of sense, because it also doesn't mean that, say we have pool testing, if there's an outbreak, you could say next 2 weeks we're all wearing masks. I mean, we can do that if that's what makes sense. But I understand the science behind it, but the whole society has said, this is, we're not doing this now, and maybe it will change before fall. But I don't see how it ultimately helps if they're getting exposed everywhere else, or people are choosing to. I mean, you can still wear a mask. No one's going to tell you not to. So I don't know.
Yeah. Anita?
I would as well agree with both Jamie and Lou and what they've said. And I also have very real concerns with some of the older students having the summer off from school, really not having to wear a mask anywhere in virtually any situation at this point. Have them come back to school in September, and all of a sudden they need to start doing this again. We have some students who will not come back to school. Very real situation, and I'm genuinely concerned about that.
Jen?
The thing I struggle with about the conversation about everywhere else they don't have to and why should they here is I keep thinking back on this. They're not legally required to go to a Red Sox game. They're not legally required to go to the grocery store. But a child, we're legally required to have them in our schools, and the child is legally required to go to school. So even though there are all these other for-profit organizations or processes, I mean, we're here to govern the safety of the kids in school. And so even though other businesses say yes or no, or other people say yes or no, I keep going asking myself, what's the core mission of what I'm trying to do here? And it's protect kids, and also that are required to sit here and come here every day by law. So I understand that I understand the comparison is tough to make. Why ask them here and not ask them someplace else? But we're also not we're not a corporation. We're not a sports event. We're not all these things. We're a school. And so I kind of ask, how does it make sense for a school perspective in a school use for what we're tasked and missioned as a school? And I know it's really difficult for kiddos to do this, but I'm very concerned about the students that are exposed, that can't get a vaccine and would want to, what the other people who are exposing them, how do they feel like it's safe? And I guess with Anita, I mean, if we did ask kids to mask, we may have a lot of kids wanting to stay remote. So maybe we'll have more kids that will still continue to want to be remote. But I would say also, if we don't ask everybody to mask, we could have a lot of kids not feeling comfortable to come back to school too. Like, I'm sure we've got a population that's maybe equal somewhat on both sides of that issue, where parents wouldn't feel comfortable enough with their kids, especially, I would imagine, in our multi-age school in Woolwich. So I worry about both groups, and I haven't really come down on it one way or another. I'm just trying to still noodle it out on all those fronts.
I have a question. Dr. Hannah, if I'm wearing a mask and others are not necessarily in a classroom, am I still protecting myself?
So yes, but the real purpose of the mask is to protect the other people around you. So yeah, you're going to have some reduced risk by wearing a mask. But really what you're trying to do is trap what you're expelling. So, and I do think there's a difference between, a Red Sox game is outside, so we're not talking about outdoor masking. And coming into one's shop, they might be in there for 30 minutes, but that's
Right.
different than being in a classroom with your other students for 6 hours unmasked when it's winter in Maine and the windows are closed. I think there's a very big difference in those scenarios.
Lorna?
So this decision, for over a year, we've been wanting to have local decisions, and we haven't been able to have any. So I feel badly that the first local decision we get to make on this, I don't want to make it. But I find it very intriguing, and maybe Dr. Hannah, you have some inside information, is that why I understand the CDC highly recommends, but they're willing to let this decision be made by people who are not scientists, people who are not healthcare professionals, and people who in one district, they may vote no and one may vote yes. And that doesn't make sense because one district isn't necessarily more dangerous than another district. So to begin with the decision, I just need logic and common sense so much in my life, and I could probably do well to be a little more flexible, but that doesn't make sense to start with. And then for the longest time, the CDC wouldn't release any data on anyone under the age of 20. And they did finally, and I found that really helpful today. And so I looked at hospitalizations, which are available for the first time in forever. And statewide, 42 people under the age of 25 were hospitalized. 0 to 4 was 9, 5 to 9 was 2.98, 10 to 14 was 2, 15 to 19 was 13, and 20 to 24 was 14. And so the bulk of the hospitalizations for children, and understand they were masked at school, but the bulk of the hospitalizations are children who are in the vaccine age rate. So data is helpful to try to get away from my sole purpose is to protect children, and it is, but we're supposed to educate. And so parents protect. That's my feeling as of late. And so with this whole mask debate, I don't necessarily support children spreading COVID-19, especially 12 and under. And I don't know the answer to that. But I feel like the community kind of should decide this, because why should 7 people decide it for a community? That's how I feel personally. I think we need to figure out the 12 and under. I think parents, I'd love to hear what parents think about it. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in the science, but even the science, I wonder, and I've said this to Jennifer and other people, you know, when my kids get in a car and drive on Route 1, that risk, when we talk about risk assessment, you know, what are we really saving kids from with masking? And I don't mean to sound callous. I just want to make sure that we're not still so afraid of making a decision that's going to backfire in our face with if a child gets COVID-19 and ends up in the hospital. But I just wonder, could we find out and wait and see if the cases spike? Do we have to decide today?
So Lorna, I have, you know, so I think that it's good to look at the rate of hospitalization because you are right. There have not been many kids who have been hospitalized, but we have had cases of the multi-systemic inflammatory disorder in the state of Maine. And even if it's a child who hasn't had that and your child winds up in the hospital, it may not seem like a big percentage until it's your child that's there. The other part is that we know what we know about COVID-19 right now. But what we don't know about this disorder is what that means for them 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and the impacts it may have. We know that it's an inflammatory disorder. Does this mean that we need to monitor these kids for other things as they grow older? And then that's the part that we don't know. And I think, you know, one option would be to have them go without masks and wait to see if there's a spike. But if we did that and somebody wound up in the hospital or wound up with something pretty severe, and we then in retrospect said we could have done something simple like ask them to wear a mask, you know, I think it would be a very unfortunate situation. I don't want kids wearing masks forever either. I just want us to have a little more information about what's happening with this as we move forward with it.
What would pool testing? Let's say we started the year with pool testing and masks. What would pool testing tell us after you know a period of time that might enable us to revisit the masking decision and say, well, we're safe. I mean, you're never going to say we're safe, but you know that our probability of widespread COVID infection is diminished.
So certainly with pooled testing, that would allow us to kind of monitor community rates, particularly as we go back to school. In terms of its impact on masking, you know, I think that, you know, I think if we could use this to kind of monitor what's happening, and if we found that this continued to be able to detect early on, even without a mask, you know, with other places, yeah, I think we can use this to get rid of our masks. That is one of the reasons why I think we all would be interested in having the pooled testing, or why we're interested in having the pooled testing in our schools. I do think that we're going to have information coming from other schools who are not masking, and I think that we can glean a lot of information from them, but I wouldn't want to be the one having the other schools watch us not masking and saying, oh, let's see what happens with that experiment.
Jim? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Dr. Hanna brought up an interesting point, and I don't know if we don't mask and a child gets very sick, what's our responsibility legally, liably? I mean, like, you know, where does that move in? If we could have said we should mask and we don't, does that open us up as a board, as a school? I mean, like, what's our legal exposure there? Patrick, I guess the question is to you.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I guess I play devil's advocate on this one. I don't know, Jen. I mean, I think it's, you know, but I think the question is, you know, you got a Maine CDC will continue to strongly recommend but not require. And just a question is that as a district, we have followed the CDC's guidance all year with the 6 requirements. And with sports, with everything, we followed the CDC guidance. And so again, Warner, you mentioned hearing from parents. I think, this is something that, again, just a question to the board is we follow those CDC guidelines. And I think regardless of what we decide to do, you're going to have parents that feel like if we follow this, that we're not being safe enough, or that, or we're being too strict if we go with this language. But I know, Dr. Hanna, we talked once this spring about sports when the masking changed, and we weren't comfortable at that time requiring something more strict. And again, I know it was outside versus inside. So.
Lou?
So I guess, we're not getting rid of masks. We're asking people to take responsibility. And I think that's.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
that's where my point was going to, Lorna.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is that if a school district does adopt the CDC language, then in essence, we are putting it in the hands of the families and the parents
Mm-hmm.
and the child, I guess, if you want to be at the high school level, whether they come to school wearing a mask if they are not vaccinated. So.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm saying is, and I know that, well, we can say, okay, it's not the same as a Red Sox game or being in a store or different things like that, but these kids are hanging out at each other's houses inside there for hours. So it's not, and again, that comes down to the parents, whether the parents are letting that happen or not, and whether they feel they're in a group that is safe for whatever reason. So our recommendation, if we go with the CDC, is just following through with that responsibility that we do want to keep everybody safe, but it's not just our responsibility. It is also each family's responsibility, and what group or pod or how they're letting their kids hang out with other kids. And, again, this is fluid. As Dr. Hanna said, if the Delta variant shows up in the state, we may end up with periods where we say, hey, the safest thing to do right now, we may be back in September and go, hey, until the end of October, we're all wearing masks, mandatory, because we're worried about the outbreak. But that's why I think the pool testing makes a lot of sense, because you can catch something before it happens. And if you need to do that temporarily, I'd rather go that route than just say everybody has to wear a mask or something. I'd rather, highly recommend if you are concerned, and there are people who have the vaccine who still wear masks because they have vulnerable family members and they don't want to risk anything. So that's fine too. We're not going to tell someone not to, but I think we highly recommend it. We go with the CDC guidelines, because otherwise then we're picking and choosing. And I think I don't think we're there yet. It would be great to start with the summer school and see how it goes. It's my personal opinion, but.
Okay, before we go on, we have to just take a vote to extend our meeting beyond 8 o'clock. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to extend.
I have a motion from Lorna, second from Anita. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, go ahead. Other comments? Jen?
So I guess we couldn't, my worry about this is that for the schools with the kids, that like for Woolwich, because they have kids who cannot be vaccinated, riding the bus, eating, being in the inside, not necessarily in the same classroom, but within the proximity of kids that are not vaccinated, and as everyone has said, not social distancing from anybody else in the communities. So I don't know, they've got a different situation there, and you can't really have a different policy, I guess, for them. So I don't know.
I think it's a good time to start talking about the younger students too, because I'm just curious what the board thinks about doing something different for the younger students. Because if what we're saying right now is we've gone with the CDC policy most of the time, and the decision should be in the hands of parents. Even though we know anyone younger who doesn't wear a mask is not vaccinated, I'm not sure at this point. I mean, at this point, it would be assuming more of a stricter procedure than is being recommended outside. And I think we all know, listening to Dr. Hannah, the trickiest part about this is scientifically, it would be safer against COVID for everyone who's under age 12 to still wear a mask, right? But it's a lot more complicated than that in many ways. Just thinking of even kids who take speech, it's really hard to practice what you're saying and be able to watch someone's lips if you're wearing a mask. And I'm not arguing in support or against it. I just think it's going to be really hard to do something different in our different schools. It would be really hard to police who has a vaccine and who doesn't, and we don't want to do that either. And it would be really hard to go against what the state is recommending, which is basically saying, if you have a vaccine, you can choose to not wear a mask. If you don't have a vaccine, we hope you wear a mask, but it's your choice. And I think, regardless of what I personally think, I'm wondering if that even matters at this point. Can we require something that's just recommended by the state? Do we want to do that? That's what I think you all should be talking about for all grade levels.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's what's so difficult about this. And Lauren has brought it up and everybody has brought it up. And it is frustrating because when you hear Dr. Hannah talk about the science and the CDC knows the science,
Mm-hmm.
and they're stating quite frankly that this is, it's just highly recommended. Why are we put in that position? That's what I'm saying. I don't think we can. I don't think we're in a position to be stricter than what the state is saying.
I think the one thing I would
But-
add is if the board does choose to go with the recommendation of the CDC, that we should have some sort of stipulation that should cases rise, that we have the right to ask people to remask, if our nurses and Dr. Hannah feel that would be better for our community.
And can I ask just more, because you brought it up, and I know they're not vaccinated, but can we create an environment that even if most of I'm assuming a lot of the kids who are 12 and under would probably still wear a mask, can we create that environment so if they're doing speech, if they're doing something, they can take a mask off? Are there ways to work around that, since that's, to make it easier?
Yeah, I think
situations?
if you were to choose that masks were recommended regardless of the age if you're unvaccinated, some little kids would not wear them, some would, and that would be their choice, and there's nothing we would say about it. But I do think it would give us more freedom in the educational setting, for instance, to have a speech teacher provide just during the session a shield with the drape, for instance, versus right now under the old requirements, we weren't allowed to do that unless we had like a medical note. But that would make it, if a parent wanted their child still to be masked, we'd at least then could provide a shield for speech. So there would be more wiggle room around that. Or if they got permission and they didn't want to wear a mask, then they wouldn't have to during that. But I think it would just allow us more room to do that. Mm-hmm.
Jen?
So if I understand it, the question is, can we require something more strict? Can or should we require something more strict than what the CDC says? So if the answer is no, we should go by what the CDC says, then we couldn't ask anyone to mask. Like it couldn't be up to Dr. Hannah or our decision if things spike. If our reasoning is we're following CDC guidelines, we would have to stick to following. So if the CDC never comes back and says they change that, I mean, I don't know, I just don't know how we would use that reasoning now and then change our reasoning later.
I can clarify that.
Okay, thanks.
This whole, one of the items that has always been in the SOP that comes out around health and safety concerns is sort of differences that happen if you're in outbreak status. And so I would say that, you know, if within the SOP, it says an outbreak status, you know, you should move to require masking or something like that, that we would lean on that. So I'm not sure of the specifics of what we could do or could not do. I would just not want to vote where we say we're not going to ever talk about masks again, is all I was saying. Does that make sense?
Jen?
So I guess I need clarification. So when people are saying the CDC says they strongly recommend but don't require, we're using that verbiage here. So I guess what maybe I should find out is exactly what the CDC says in the SOP or in any statement that they make about we strongly recommend but don't require. Is there a comma there or something that says but that changes in light of outbreak? I mean, because we were saying we're trying to go along with the state, but maybe I don't know exactly what the state's saying.
I don't believe they've updated it since the change, so I couldn't guess what they're going to write, but I'll give you an example. When they took away social distancing and they updated the SOP, they did put something in there that said, if you're in outbreak status, you have to go back to social distancing at 3 feet. That's the kind of example I'm saying. So I'm not sure if the newest update will have something about masks on or off. I'm just saying I'd like us potentially to be open to that if it's recommended in the SOP. Yeah.
Okay, so the discussion is is basically around around language from the state that they recommend mask wearing but don't require it. And the simple question is, do we adopt that guideline for all our kids? We're talking about K through 12. Is there, I mean, it's been discussed whether we can, although there's a complication with Woolwich, whether or not we can require mask wearing for younger kids, but not for those older kids who have had access to vaccine. But that doesn't seem to be part of anyone's scenario, I guess, right? Right? Yeah.
Dr. Hannah, could I ask another question?
Yes, definitely.
I have all these notes and I just found one. The World Health Organization is, you know, I hate to even say it, but they're not recommending vaccine for kids under 16. Was that it? Was that their announcement? The WHO, World Health Organization?
Not that I have heard about, but if there's something new, but that's not what I've heard about. I think
Okay.
Worldwide, the goal is to get everybody vaccinated.
No,
I think that
mine
in
too.
certain-
Mine too. I think where I'm
I think
going
in certain
is,
countries, oh, sure. But in certain countries, I think vaccine availability is not as robust as it is here. And so
Right.
It may be that they are prioritizing, but I haven't
And
I heard that they're not recommending
that's what I was wondering, is that I know even in European countries, the vaccine rollout has not been very successful. So I was assuming that maybe it was more from a supply and demand supply versus something else. Okay, well, I don't want to get in the weeds on that, but and then I guess the question is, since we're talking about the future and we can't predict it, of course, I mean, kind of where does it end? I mean, if we're looking at a 40 or 50% vaccination rate now with people who are, is there a goal of once it's available for younger students, is it like a threshold based on your professional opinion? Like, I know now it's not available for anyone, but do you know if there are metrics within your peer groups or your professional organizations for when, is there a percentage of when kids get vaccinated that are under 12? That masks
Do you
are
mean, is there
optional?
a timeline, or is there a certain percentage of vaccination and then you feel like there's herd immunity? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess that's in a very roundabout way. That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have looked all over for like an exact metric. Is it 60%? Is it 70%? What is that vaccination rate to feel like you have, herd immunity? And I haven't found anything that tells me an exact number. Once a month, pediatricians, infectious disease doctors, everybody kind of meets together on a giant Zoom meeting, and I'll see if our next one in July gives us a little more information about that, because the last meeting, they hadn't yet changed the recommendations for masking. So, I hope to be able to gather a little more information. I had hoped to have that number for you today, but I do not have it.
That's fine. I was just curious if that was readily available. And then I think my last comments and things I had written down, again, go back to risk assessment. And, I think all of us would feel terrible if one of our children in the district got a terrible case of COVID-19 that threw them in the hospital or worse. I wonder, though, how would we know if they got it at school or didn't get it from a sleepover? Or, I just wonder at what point do we do our best, and then at what point do we look at other, like all our energies in protecting children from COVID-19? And then, we haven't been able to talk about 1,000 other ways where when they're in our custody, we protect them from bullying, or we protect them from suicidal thoughts, or we protect them from bus accidents or sports injuries. I guess I'm just saying that just to make sure that I get it out there on my thought process, so that you all understand what I'm trying to think about. That's all.
Other comments? It's a tough one. I mean, my personal preference is to mask, quite frankly. I would use pool testing as a way of telling us as a way to inform us as to the next step. But unfortunately, and I say unfortunate because I think the messaging and the guidelines that we're getting, from Maine CDC and DOE and from the governor's office are so contradictory in many ways that it makes it difficult for the schools as kind of a standalone entity to make a decision that that makes sense. I mean, I agree. You see kids out on the street all the time without masks, and so what sense does it make to ensure that they're masked in school? It at some level it just doesn't make sense. Well, we need to know whether or not we're comfortable moving to a decision on indoor masking, or whether we take more time for discussion on this. What time? When is? We do have a summer school coming up, so that's
It's already started today.
okay. So there's a
We
timing
need a
issue here.
separate, so like, if I did a motion, does that include summer school?
I would say it would be for everything in the building moving forward.
Yeah.
Moving
Board
forward?
meetings,
Right.
summer
Okay.
school,
Yep.
everything.
We're not gonna parse
No, okay, that's
summer school from regular school, and nor are we saying that whatever decision we make tonight won't be as incontrovertible.
No, right.
I mean, we may
Things change.
we may be revisiting this sooner than we think. So what is? I don't want to force a vote if people still think they want to discuss this further. It may be in a special meeting, but what's the will of the board here? Are we ready to decide?
Did you make a motion?
I haven't yet, no. I think
No, I
think
thought
James
we
is
were in
about
the
to.
process of making.
Okay, who wants to put a motion out there?
Do you want to? Or you want to? Huh?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. I guess I would move to adopt the current CDC guidelines going forward for our district until such time we would see that we need to revisit them.
And that guideline is that masking
That masking is highly recommended for people who are not able to or are not vaccinated, and we encourage that and hope they do it. But it's I don't know why the CDC did this, but that's where they're at. So
Should we touch the per medium we're gaining before we lose Dr. Hannah? Okay.
Okay. Okay, is everyone clear? Is everyone clear on the motion? So we have a motion by Lou, second by Lorna to adopt the CDC guideline, which is that masking is strongly advised, but not required of those who are vaccinated or unvaccinated. Okay. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Okay, we're going to have a split here. We've got 5 in favor, all opposed, and 2 opposed. So the motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Dr. Hannah, if you're still there, thank you very much.
thank you, Dr. Hannah.
Thanks. We'll speak again, I'm sure. Okay, thank you, everybody. Item 10.6, to move on, item 10.6, we have to approve the computation of declaration of votes of the June 8th budget referendum. That was included in your packet. It was a really hot day, and I hope that that's the reason we did not see more folks show up. I mean, I do have to say it's somewhat, I'm going to say it's disappointing. I think we work hard on the budget for the public, and I'm hoping that the fact more people didn't vote had to do with the fact that there was not much controversy, and it was very hot. And when I asked somebody why Phippsburg voted in the numbers that they did, of a Phippsburg resident, the response was everybody in Phippsburg votes.
Berg wins again.
They always vote. So,
It's just that a larger percentage of the population turns out. And it's a dynamic in a little community. I don't know.
Well, anyways, do I have a motion to approve the computation?
Move to approve.
A second. So we have a motion by Lou, second by Lorna. Any comments? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, item 10.7, we have, this is kind of a standard for Jamie's benefit. It's kind of a routine motion that we make at the end of the year just to give Patrick the opportunity to move forward with hiring in the absence of specific board action. Although you do make us aware of the candidates, and they do come back to us.
They don't come back to you, but I do provide you with the same backup that you get. And we only have right now, it's either 2 or 3. I think it's just 2 teaching positions that are open right now. So it won't be many.
So I would move to authorize. Hire away, Patrick.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion by Lou, second by Bill. Could you just give us a quick update where we are overall in terms of our needs? You said we have 2 open teaching positions.
Yeah, we have a grade 5 teaching position at Fisher Mitchell that maybe we're very close to getting there. And then it's the health/PE position that's shared between Dyke Newell and Woolwich. That's a part-time position that, that we're, trying to fill. It's a unique position. And then besides that, those are the 2 teaching positions that we have right now. And then I think we have 3 or 4 ed techs that are positions that are open in the district, and that's it.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Lou, second by Lorna, I think. All to give Patrick authority to hire over the summer. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thanks. And 11.0, our next regular meeting is scheduled for August 23rd. Taking July off, at least that's the way it looks right now. So, all right, thank you very much. It's been an interesting year. Take a month off, enjoy yourselves, and we'll come back. So do I have a
We have to
motion?
sign.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
It's okay, they can adjourn, but we'll sign.
Yep.
Yeah,
So we have-
sign something real quick.
Okay, we have a motion from Jamie, second by Lorna, on adjournment. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thank
can
you.
adjourn, but you can't go home.
Yeah, just real
We have
quick.
to sign.
How many did we have from the public? Or what's still on? Okay.